I wanted to talk to you about one of my favourite writers, who is Garth Nix. Garth Nix's books tend to run from young adult to adult young adult. So his Keys to the Kingdom series, which I've read, I think is probably written for and marketed to 13-year-olds. I read them when I was 22 and still enjoyed them, and they were fantastic. And they're not really children's books. Okay, they kind of are. They're young adult. His other series of books, the Old Kingdom books, are more adult young adult. So I think they're marketed more and written towards people of my age, maybe a bit younger, probably down to like 16. I think with young adult it always comes down to the age of the character, so if the protagonist is like 5, then people think, oh, that's a children's book. And if they're like 25, that's marketed for like 25-year-olds, and if they're 16, they're marketed for teenagers, which is weird. Nitpicking? I think nitpicking. Probably nitpicking. So I wanted to talk about the two series of books I've read by him, the Keys to the Kingdom and the Old Kingdom. I have also read a few other books, standalone books, but I'm just not going to talk about them because I wouldn't have time. Okay, 1, A Confusion of Princes, quite a strange book, kind of Warhammery, science fiction, very well written, odd story. I'd give it maybe 3 stars out of 5. So, the Keys to the Kingdom series by Garth Nix. So this is marketed for younger people, but I really enjoyed it. What I found was that it was just really imaginative. I think there is a bit of a difference with books that are aimed at an older audience and a younger audience. Older audiences tend to be what would be the next logical step within the set of rules I've already created, whereas kids' books tend more to be, and then a dragon came in and there were lasers shooting at it and then I started to fly. And I'm not dissing that because I found these books incredibly imaginative. There isn't actually a dragon in the book. No, wait, is there? There might be in one of them. The series follows a guy called Arthur, who I immediately like because he has asthma and he can't run anywhere because of his asthma, and I like a man who can't run anywhere because of his asthma because I am a man who can't run anywhere because of his asthma. Arthur, at the very start of the book, it doesn't ruin anything, he is running in PE and he has an asthma attack and he thinks he's about to die. At the very last minute, someone appears to him and gives him an atlas and also a magical artifact called a key. This stops him from dying. It wasn't meant to, but it turns out it's really hard to describe. It's set in our world, except there's also another world called the House, and this is where the creator lived, and it's kind of like a heaven. So the creator has disappeared from the house. No one knows where he's gone, but he left a will, and he asked 7 people to look after the will and make sure that what he said in the will would happen. The 7 people didn't do that. Instead, they broke up the house into 7 parts, and they all rule one part. Mr. Monday rules the lower house, Grim Tuesday runs the far reaches, Drowned Wednesday, who has like an ocean, Sir Thursday has the, I think, like the gardens, Lady Friday is the middle house, Superior Saturday is the upper house, and Lord Sunday runs, I think, something called the Incomparable Gardens. So the house is a really interesting concept. It's a bit like heaven. So the 7 executors of the will, they kind of rule the house on their own, except the will has a mind of its own, and it was ripped into 7 pieces, but each part of the will kind of has an embodiment, as an animal. So in each book, Arthur goes to a different part of the house, he has to find a key, he has to find the part of the will. So there's this whole theological aspect to it, because there's this creator and a heaven-like place, but that's not shoved down your teeth quite so much. Like in the Amber Spyglass, the whole theology bit is really heavy-handed. And I like the Amber Spyglass, but this one, it's a bit less, you know, God, religion stuff. And it's mostly just a really good adventure story. It's really imaginative, I can't say that enough. So the other set of books that I'm going to talk about, the Old Kingdom series, is marketed, I think, for older people, but again, probably because the protagonist is about 16. So it's made up of the initial trilogy, which is Sabriel, Liriel, and Aborson. He recently wrote Clariel, that serves as a kind of prequel, except it happens a long time before. And he's written, I think, 2 collections of short stories, which feature some stories set in the same place, and then some other short stories he's written. One I've got is Across the Wall. There's a really good story in here, which is like a retelling of the Arthurian myth of Excalibur and the Lady in the Lake. But that short story in particular was really well written, so well done, Mr. Nix. So I'll mostly just talk about the Aborson trilogy. Sabriel is about a woman called Sabriel, whose father is called the Aborson. The Aborson's job is to make sure that the dead stay dead. The concept of death is really interesting in this book. When you die, your soul goes into a river, which goes through, I think, 9 gates. And to successfully become dead, you kind of go along this river and up. But there's ghouls and there's creatures down surrounding the river, in the river itself, which can stop you from reaching your destination. There are necromancers, which will go into the river, find souls and bind them and bring them back from the dead as undead servants. So it's the abortion's job to kill the undead and to travel into death and make sure they pass through the ninth gate. And he does this, very interestingly, with a set of bells. And when I say it like that, it sounds kind of lame, but it's not, it's really cool. Like, he just has a set of bells, and they're magical, and each one does a separate thing. If an undead hears the ringing of one bell, they might become bound to serve the ringer. One bell banishes anyone who hears it into the realm of death. So Sabriel is the daughter of the opossum. She's at school in a land which is kind of similar to ours in maybe the early 1900s. It has the kind of feel of a 1930s, 1940s Britain, except to the north of the country there's called the Wall, and at the Wall magic kind of seeps from the country that's beyond the Wall. So Sabriel gets a message saying her dad has died and has to travel over the Wall to find out what's happened to him. So she travels over the Wall to the Old Kingdom, which is a land which used to be quite prosperous and magical, except years and years of necromancers have kind of brought it to its knees. It's a very dangerous place to live. There is magic, but not everyone can do magic. It's a really good fantasy adventure kind of book. It would do really well as a standalone, actually, except many questions are left unanswered. So then we follow up with Lirael and Daborson. Lirael is from the point of view of another young woman. She's part of the Clare, which are a bloodline of women, like a really big family, but their power is that they can see into the future. But Lirael has yet to be able to see into the future. Most of the Clare women her age have already seen into the future, they've been accepted as part of the clan, whereas she isn't, and she feels ostracised. And she goes to work in a library, and she's kind of shunned by a lot of people who, yeah, they're kind of friendly towards her, but she feels apart. And you feel really sorry for her, but she's a lovely, lovely, lovely character. Garth Nix writes from the female point of view really well, and you get this real sense of loneliness and ostracism from her, because she's kind of helpless. She can't really do anything about her situation, but her story develops because she makes several sort of magical discoveries. Lirael also features as a character Sabriel's son, who's in a very similar situation to Lirael. He's from a line of Aborsons. He should be training to become the next Aborson after his mum, but he can't really do it. The idea of fighting the dead makes him sick. So in Lirael, you have those two characters, and then it all culminates in Aborson. All these stories entwine, and I really enjoyed it, because you found out a lot about the nitty-gritty of the world, and of magic, and of the nature of magic in this world. The magic system in this book, I've talked about in the previous video, is really good. There's something called the Charter, which is like a flow of magic. People write runes or charter marks to harness magic in the form of light or strength or what have you, and everything kind of comes from the charter. But then there's this other kind of magic which is called free magic, which is what you use to raise the undead. And that's something I didn't talk about in my video, but like necromancers, they use this free magic and they become sort of tainted by it so that they smell acidic, because free magic, it's not harnessed by the charter, it's really wild and unruly, it could kill you at any moment, it's dangerous, so you have a natural aversion to the feeling of free magic. Ultimately the books are really well written, the plot is great, but the characters are the best thing about it. Sabriel is a really strong character, kind of from the outset. She grows quite a lot because this sort of kingdom's fate rests on her shoulders, but she's got quite a lot of inner strength. Lirael, on the other hand, is great because she develops so much. She starts as a very weak, hopeless character, and then she gains confidence in herself. And it's not like growth through pain or character development through adversity. It's more, because it's written over the period of several months or years even, you just slowly see her character build and gain confidence and grow up, and that's really nice. So that's my review of the Garth Nix books that I've read. There's also Clariel, which is a kind of prequel, very different in tone from the other Old Kingdom books, but you find out a lot more about the world. So that's all my Garth Nix books that I've read. Ooh, that's heavy. You don't have to be a young adult or a teenager to really enjoy these books. You can be any age. My father-in-law is reading Sabriel, and he's not a young... ooh. There's no good way of saving that, is there? He's a young adult at heart. I don't think he watches these, so it's good. So if you have read any Garth Nix, or if you're interested in it, or if there's any similar books you want to talk about, please leave a comment or tweet me, and thanks very much for watching.